My name is George Lizos, and I'm so excited to have here with me Jo Westwood, who is a life coach and co-author of HigherSelfie, known for her fun, real, no BS approach to helping you improve your life. She specializes in helping women escape from codependency, reclaim their lives with confidence, and live lovingly fierce. Her online Codependence recovery course is available now at jowestwood.com. Jo, it's so great to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, George. It's such an honor.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be diving into this topic because it is probably my favorite topic to talk about. And I want to start always with these interviews. I want to start with your journey, to go back with your story. What has been your journey of discovering about codependency, of living through codependency, and coming to a point where you can help other people, other women, overcome it and really find healthy relationships and really create these healthy relationships that we're all striving for?
Oh, so I'm going to keep this brief, George, because I feel like this could be the whole hour. So I identify as someone who is a recovering codependent. I have been codependent my whole life. It is very much how my family was set up. So there's addiction in my family line, which is very common in the families of codependent people. And I basically, so I'm 32 now, and I basically haven't been single since I was 13 years old. Like, that is the long and short of the story. So I was always a daddy's girl, and then I kind of tripped into romantic relationships at a very early age and just hopped from one to the next. And I would always keep attracting the same people. So I would always attract actually abusive people. I prefer to use the word abusive. A lot of people use the word toxic, and I do too sometimes, because I know that that's what people identify with. But one of my tricks of helping myself to heal from codependency, which we'll get into later on, is trying to take the emotion out of language particularly when I speak about the people I've been in relationship with. So I prefer to stay factual rather than emotional. That's no judgment on people who want to use the word toxic. I totally get it, that it really describes that behavior style. But anyway, so kind of attracting in these same abusive, narcissistic, most of the time people. I think I've actually, until my most recent relationship, I think I'd only ever been out with one non-narcissistic person, and I dumped him because I got bored. So yeah, repeating this pattern with narcissists, but it actually took for me to get married to one for me to finally wake up and realize, because I had never been the kind of person really that wanted to get married. But when I met this person, it was like, I just couldn't understand how we hadn't met sooner, because we just seemed so perfectly matched. And for anybody out there who's codependent and has been with a narcissist and has really gone through that kind of love bombing, that seduction stage in the beginning, you'll understand that feeling. They feel like they are your other half, and that's all part of it's all part of the seduction, and it's all part of the pattern and the dynamic that you create together. And so after 8 months, I married this person. But even before we were married, the red flags started to show. And I always say to friends and acquaintances and clients, nobody gets married because they want to get divorced. So even though I was never like the marrying kind, I definitely wasn't the kind who was scrapbooking from when I was 6 with my ideal Disney bridal wear. When I was married, I really meant it. And I wanted to be with this person for the rest of my life. So that's what woke me up, because it made me try, I think, in a way that I never had before, to understand this pattern. I finally went to to a marriage counselor who told me in no uncertain terms what was happening, which was, I was completely shell-shocked. And yeah, the rest is history, really.
And now you have the Lovingly Fierce Codependent Recovery course. Could you give us some information about that and how that came about to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lovingly Fierce, just the phrase has been it had been this seed in my mind. It actually came to me on a coaching retreat that I went to with my former business coach, Heather Dominic. And it was this seed of an idea that was planted for me probably around 5 years ago. So it's been in the ether for a long time, but and it just would never go away. It's probably been one of the most consistent things in my life, actually. And it was a concept that I started to develop in my coaching practice. So in my work as a life coach, what I was finding actually is that before I even realized I was codependent, is that I was attracting codependent clients. And so I would say about 90% of the people I've probably ever worked with had some kind of codependent or people pleaser or fixer empath vibe going on. Because of course the universe was just desperately trying to show me in every way what was going on for me. And so I was teaching them this concept of lovingly fierce, and lovingly fierce is about breaking down the myth that you can't, that to be strong and to know yourself and to be confident that you have to be in some way arrogant or aggressive or unkind. And it's about showing people who have codependent and people pleaser and fixer tendencies that actually you can have boundaries and you can say no and you can negotiate and confront actually in a very kind and loving way, and that you can be both. You don't have to. The beautiful thing about codependent people and empathic people is we have these huge hearts full of unconditional love. It's just that when we're in our codependent nature, we're channeling it in a very unhealthy way, and lovingly fierce helps you to channel it in a much healthier way, in a way that's strong and empowering instead of disempowering and really exhausting.
Oh, such a needed tool for empaths and light workers, because we tend to be codependent in nature in a way, because we want to help people, we want to be there and care for people, and sometimes we may become a little bit too attached and allow other people's needs to become more important than our needs. So thank you so much for creating this beautiful course, and what a beautiful name for it. Now, Joel, anyone who knows me would tell you that my favorite topic to talk about is codependency. In fact, you would see me walking down a street, seeing a couple exchanging a conversation, and I'll be like, oh my God, they're so codependent. So clearly, you and I are very passionate about the topic of codependency, but people hearing us live right now, or just hearing the replay, the podcast, may not know what codependency is and why it's so important to talk about and understand, especially codependent relationships. Could you define to us simply what is codependency and why should we care, especially with regards to codependent relationships?
Sure. So I think codependent people, okay, so first I want to say that not all empathic people, not all light workers and highly sensitives are codependent, but pretty much all codependent people are empathic and highly sensitive because we're trained to be that way. So I think the easiest way to define codependency is actually to describe some of the behaviors that codependent people might or that they commonly display. So codependent people often become enmeshed or infatuated in relationships, and that can be romantic relationships, or it can be work relationships, or it can be some sort of a situation, whether it's in your family or with your home or your work, very, very quickly in an almost abnormal way compared to the other non-codependent people around them. Codependent people work themselves to the point of exhaustion, often for other people. So you might find yourself collapsing into bed at midnight after having done everything around the house for everyone in your family, and the house is spick and span, and actually then at the end of it feeling very resentful. You know, we all have those crazy overproductive days, but if you find yourself often just collapsing in absolute exhaustion and feeling resentful, that's a codependent trait also. Another codependent trait is kind manipulation, or manipulating with kindness, I call it. So that is, instead of just being able to ask somebody up front for what you want because of this terrible fear that we have inside of being fundamentally unlovable and therefore being rejected. And so instead of asking up front, what you'll do is you'll try to manipulate somebody with kindness. So you'll try to do something, or you try to do lots of things for them in the hope that they will suggest the thing that you are trying to ask for, or that they will offer the thing that you are trying to ask for. And then again, if and when that doesn't happen, you feel resentful because actually your kind actions haven't come from a pure place of just wanting to give, because you don't really, you know, as a codependent person, your cup is not full. It is always empty and it is always drained. Your cup has a hole in the bottom. You know, we're in this world of personal development and the light worker world, we know about this phrase of, you know, fill your cup so it's overflowing and give from the overflow. Codependents have a hole in the bottom of the cup. So I think they're probably some of the common traits, the most common traits actually, that I think codependent people feel. Another one, which is something that I think isn't spoken about very often, but codependent people have this really weird, contradictory inferiority-superiority complex. So you might find yourself as a codependent person outwardly feeling and acting quite inferior to other people, but inwardly feeling quite superior and thinking, well, I could have done it better than them, or I can take care of them better than they can take care of themselves, or thinking, why wasn't I picked? I'm as good as they are. But outwardly being almost humble to the point of, yeah, it just kind of isn't genuine, the level of humility that you have, and almost putting yourself down. So yeah, I think that kind of gives you a broad overview of some of the common codependent traits. Yeah,
that defines it pretty specifically. Thank you so much for that. And I specifically like the metaphor of, I got chills just when you said that, of the hole at the bottom of the cup, because it gives a perfect visual of what codependency is, in the sense that our cup is supposed to be full, meaning we're supposed to give all the love and the happiness and the fulfillment to ourselves. We should give that to ourselves, and yet there is a hole, there is a wound, there is some hurt that prevents us from loving ourselves fully, and that's what we need to fix or just heal in order to be able to fill the cup and keep it filled, and therefore then overfill it as well. So I'm sure you'll agree with me, Joe, that the majority of the relationships we see in movies, in TV series, in the books we read, in the media, are codependent relationships, in the sense that there are two unfulfilled people coming together, expecting the other person to fulfill them. And there's a typical plot story plot where girl says, I love you, the boy doesn't say I love you back, so they break up because the love is not there, where it's really codependency. That's what it is. So what is the difference between love and codependency? What is real love? I feel we have such a construed perception of what love is because of the codependent way it's portrayed in the media and in the world, frankly. What are the differences?
Okay, so 3 things I have to say about this. The first thing is just around this, I love that you give this example of TV and movies, because almost every handsome, successful male lead that you will see on TV or in movies is a narcissist, and there is a blog post in me about that. So just a heads up, ladies, all your Don Drapers and all of those kind of guys, they are all narcissists, and that's why you find them so sexy. But that's a little tangent for you. So what is the difference between love and codependency? So there was 2 ways I would define this. The first is that codependency is addiction and it's exciting, therefore. So if you think of codependency in terms of that it's like a substance addiction. So if you're addicted to a drug, you take a drug and it gives you a high, and then you come down and you crash, and then you take some more and you get a high, and then you crash. That is exactly what codependency feels like, and that's what you will feel like if you are codependent when you get into a relationship with somebody, or you get into whatever your addictive situation is, because you could be codependent with work or with family, and you can you can self-medicate, just like with other addictions, with TV and sugar and drugs and alcohol, because you are codependent. So you'll get that up and down high, which which is the thing actually that is portrayed in movies and TV. It's this, oh, I'm so sad, I'm so lonely, and then poof, like I meet the one and my whole life is fixed, and the lead lady, she's on a high, and oh my goodness, thank you, my life is solved. That is codependency. Real love, in comparison to a codependent person, feels boring. So if you meet somebody and you think this person is great, but that's kind of growing on me really slowly, go with that. Real love feels steady. Real love is more like contentment than excitement. Real love kind of envelops you gently like a warm blanket. It doesn't whiz you off on a roller coaster. And of course you can get those moments of excitement, and of course it's you have those sparks with somebody that you love, but the overall feeling is much more like, and I'm doing this gentle rolling hills movement with my hands for the people listening on the podcast, rather than this like up and down wild spike of addiction. And there was another thing that I wanted to say about that, but it's gone out of my mind. It'll come back if it's important.
That's okay. It's going to come. And I love what you just said, because you're really giving us a new plot to what relationships should be like, which sort of rewrites what we've been having in mind for years, what has been imprinted in our consciousness for so many years about how relationships are supposed to be, which is toxic, addictive, and codependent. So, Joe, what are the values of a healthy relationship? What constitutes a healthy relationship? I want to dig a little bit deeper so people have a greater visual, and even deeper visual, and more explanations and values that they can really take and gauge whether their relationships are codependent or not. So what would you say are the main cornerstones of a healthy relationship?
I would say, I think it's really important to ask yourself questions about when you're in a relationship and really dig into how you feel. Do you feel respected? Do you feel heard? And really heard, not just heard for the sake of manipulation, for the sake of, I'll pretend I'm listening and that'll shut her up for 5 minutes, because we know the difference between those two, right? Do you feel genuinely cared for? Are you able to be vulnerable and truthful with this person without feeling like they would run away or they would find you less attractive? That's a really key point in toxic relationships, actually, is feeling like if you show any vulnerability that you will be less desirable. So can you be vulnerable with this person? Can they see you on your worst day, a blubbering mess, not wanting to get out of bed, exhausted, the house is in disarray, and you can't do anything about it, and you can do nothing for them, and they still love you, as the days when you are firing on all cylinders? And do you feel accepted as you are? I would say they're the keys for me for a healthy relationship.
God, I love them. I just have a clear idea in my mind right now. Thank you for this check. I love that you give checklists, by the way, because this way I can see myself as a listener right now. And if you're listening, do this right now. Get a piece of paper and just go back to the recording and make a note of all the points that Joe listed. And if you feel you're in a codependent relationship, put them somewhere where you can see them every single day, so you can remind yourself of situations like that and get yourself out of it if you need to. Joe, I think
pay attention if the answer is no to any of those questions, by the way. Please don't make excuses for a person. If they continually make you feel like the answers to those questions are no, like, that's a sign. That's a signal that it's time to get out. They're what we call red flags, and that's the universe showing you what you're really worth, and that you need to go away and find that in yourself, and then find somebody that can do that with you.
So, Joe, someone who's just been listening to us right now, and they're like, damn, I think I'm in a codependent relationship, and I've been in one for years. What are the first steps they need to take to get out?
Okay, so depending on, I can't tell anybody what to do in their relationship, and I certainly know that in my marriage, after that marriage counselor told me exactly what was happening, the dynamic that I was in. It took me 18 months to leave, and I left and I came back and we separated and we got back together. And so I know it isn't always instant, but I think the first most important thing for you is to decide what your boundaries are, decide what do you want. And I understand that actually sometimes it's important that you have to try to get that in the existing relationship to prove to yourself that you won't get it before you can leave. That's certainly what I had to do. I knew that in my marriage, I had to, if I was going to leave it, I had to do everything that I could to stay in it first. And I did. And I feel really okay about that. I know I didn't leave any stone unturned. So that's the first thing, is ask yourself those questions that we just spoke about, and then decide, if the answer is no to those, what do you want instead? What will your boundary be? And what does that look like on a practical level? Because this is, again, it's that thing of really busting that Disney myth of this kind of perfect love that, you know, like, poof, here we go, your life is fixed. You know, love is a very practical thing. What does this person do for you on a daily basis? I think there's a lot of confusion around the phrase of unconditional love, particularly in the kind of light worker community. I think there are two levels on which we love. We are human beings on a spiritual path, and I think we can absolutely love unconditionally on a spiritual level. My spirit can love my ex-husband's spirit, because I know that he was born a pure, kind, innocent little baby like the rest of us. And he was brought up in a situation that made him somebody who was abusive. I was brought up in a situation that made me codependent, and we just like fit together like a hand in a glove like that. So on a spiritual level, I can love him unconditionally with kindness and no judgment. On a human level, my love absolutely has conditions, and those conditions are kindness, respect, vulnerability, open communication, all of these things that really make up true love, real love. And so if you're in this codependent relationship that you've been in for a long time and you're wondering how to get out, think about those elements. What are you not getting? What do you need instead? The next thing is make your exit plan. Make sure you're safe, make sure you have somewhere to go, and tell your friends. Because this was something I found really difficult, is because of because of how prevalent codependent relationships actually are in our society. A lot of the behaviors that we experience in codependent relationships seem really normal, and to a lot of people, particularly people of older generations as well, they might say to you, well, if that's really the worst that's going on, like it just can seem like a kind of old school, very like old fashioned masculine feminine dynamic, when actually it's a codependent and abusive or narcissistic dynamic. So that was one of the things I found quite difficult, was kind of explaining to people, this is what's been going on, because from the outside we looked like a totally functioning family. So tell some trusted friends and make sure you have a safe space to go to. And the best thing that you can do is just remove yourself as quickly as possible. Don't do the codependent thing of trying to ease out gently and save their feelings. You matter most in this process. That's what you have to know about this process. That's what you have to know about the process of exiting a codependent or abusive relationship, is this is for you. It's not for them. You're not doing anybody else a favor except you and your heart and your soul. So put the focus on you, and allow your friends and your family and those who can support you to put the focus on you too.
Oh God, I feel that this last piece of advice, especially opening up to other people and letting other people help us, is so important, especially for light workers and empaths, and especially for spiritual people, because we have expectations from ourselves to get it right every single time. We have expectations from ourselves to be these loving, kind people where we don't allow ourselves to be assertive. We don't allow ourselves to have boundaries, because in our book, these boundaries may seem as aggressive, but whereas in fact, it's just our human needs that we're ignoring. because because of our kind nature. So I feel it's such an important piece of advice and a challenge at the same time for people to overcome their introversion and accept that they're humans and not these untouchable spiritual beings that just get it right every single time, and just be humble enough to ask for help and let other people give them that help. So thank you for that. Now let's take this a step further. Someone has come out of an abusive relationship, but because they've spent their entire lives in codependent relationships, they keep attracting the same relationship over and over again. They keep attracting the same abusive, toxic partners, because as we all know, our thoughts and our beliefs and our emotions attract our reality. So if all we know is codependency, then we may attract codependency. How do we heal our internal hurt? How do we heal the hole at the bottom of our cup so that we don't keep attracting the same people?
I think one of the most important things that we can do is realize where we are codependent. So for me, men are my kryptonite. Romantic relationships is where I'm most codependent. That's where it shows up most. But codependency, it runs through all my life, actually. And so when I took out romantic relationships, codependency showed up in other areas of my life. And so taking out that main kind of addictive trigger for me, which was romantic relationships, allowed me to start the healing process, because I could see the codependent behaviors, and I was also attracting the same toxic people. I had a boss who, so I went into employment for a while after I separated from my husband, just for a bit of stability and for self-care for myself as well. So that was something that I did, is I put myself in the most easy, stable situation I could, because I knew I was going to have a lot of really hard work to do outside of money, like income generating work. I was going to have to do lots of hard personal work. So that might be a decision you want to make for yourself as well. How do you streamline your life and make it easier? Because codependents are great at filling our time with loads of crap. Some good crap, some crazy crap. But I had this boss in this job who bullied me and gaslit me at work. And so it showed up for me, and it actually taught me a way to start putting in boundaries. And I was like, oh, hell no, like, this is not happening again. I just left a marriage where this was happening. Like, you think, woman, that you are going to do this to me at work? No way. And it really allowed me to, I gave myself that space where I could see the codependent behavior, I could see the pattern repeat, and it was a way where I didn't feel so attached and enmeshed, because it wasn't a romantic relationship, it wasn't my kryptonite. And so I was really able to start building those boundaries, and I was really able to start living in that lovingly fierce way and giving that pushback and healing that codependency. And I also went to Codependents Anonymous, which is a 12-step meeting for codependent people, similar to Alcoholics Anonymous, but for people who struggle with a healthy relationship, with healthy relationships. So just on a practical level, that was really helpful for me. So I would say that's the first thing, is like streamline your life, simplify everything, make your life as easy as possible, because the emotional work will be really hard, and try your best to take a break from the areas where you are most unhealthy. So if that is romantic relationships, don't make the first thing that you do be to download Tinder. Don't go out to clubs looking to like pick somebody up. Try to fill your time with things that are good for you and that feel positive and healthy. So whether that's more time with friends, whether that's yoga, whether that's spiritual practice, and remembering the things actually that you lost in the codependent relationship, because that's another thing that you will notice if you are in a codependent relationship, is you will lose whole chunks of your life. You'll go into that relationship as a gym bunny, and you'll find yourself 4 years down the line having never been to the gym once, and you'll think, hang on a minute, I used to be really fit and strong, and now I'm not. Or you'll find, or maybe you used to meditate every day, and then you'll find yourself completely frazzled and disconnected and think, God, why is that? Oh, because I've been so busy doing everything for everybody else that I haven't been in my spiritual practice. Yeah, so it's like giving yourself that time back.
And simplifying our lives and allowing ourselves to making our life simple so that we give ourselves the space basically to explore and heal what's creating our sense of codependency. So the final step to the healing journey. So we've got out of the first codependent relationship, then we've broken the pattern of attracting codependent relationships, moving on. How do we get to discover what we really want in a romantic relationship after we've healed our codependency, when all our experiences and all our examples of relationships have been codependent? How do we get to really understand, who am I as a person? What do I want from a relationship? And how do I go about to attract that into my life?
So it's so important that you start to build the life that you really wanted for yourself, that you thought the other person was going to give to you. So you have to start to build that for yourself. When you start to build that for yourself, your sense of self will grow immeasurably. You'll start to remember who you are. It's not even really discovering who you are, it's just remembering who you are. It's kind of peeling back those layers and stripping back. I have this really gross phrase. It's called the crust of history. It's like you chip away all that like crust that's been laid on you by your family line and your ancestral line, and that teacher that said that you were no good, and all that crap, whatever you've been carrying around for all those years. And you finally start to remember and see who you actually are. When you see who you actually are, it becomes so much easier to attract in people who truly reflect that. One thing I do want to say about this is that even as you start to heal, you will still attract toxic, abusive, narcissistic people, because they're attracted to shiny things. So as you start to shine bright, you become stronger and even more beautiful than you've ever been. They will be so attracted to you. But the difference is that when you are healed, they do not stick. They just slide right off you. You go out for a date with this person, and I have another gross phrase for you, George. I'm here just to gross out your listeners. You can smell it like a fart in a lift. You're just like, oh, like straight away. Before, you would have been 6 months down the line, only just seeing the first red flag. Instead, you see it on the first date, or you see it in the first job interview, and you just don't go any further. You're like, nope, not for me. And the more you have those affirming experiences, as you start to re-enter, say, the world of romance, and you start to experiment, it's giving yourself that contrast. So then you'll meet somebody who doesn't give you that feeling, who isn't toxic, who is a really good-hearted person, and there may or may not be a spark there, but you'll start to see, oh, yeah, I like that about him. Like, that's the kind of thing, or her, that's the kind of thing that I would like in a partner. And it may not be, they may not be the one, but you can kind of start to build this idea of the kind of person that you would love to be with and that you would love to be loved by. Yeah, I think that says it.
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much for giving us such a practical step-by-step guidance from the moment we realize we're in a codependent relationship to getting out of that, to breaking the pattern, and then healing and attracting a fulfilling, truly loving relationship. Could you please tell people where they can get in touch with you and how they can access your new course? It's called Lovingly Fierce, the Codependence Recovery Course. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Thank you, George. Yeah, so you can come and check me out on my website, joewestwood.com. So you can find lots of cool free resources on there, including a free Lovingly Fierce meditation. So feel free to hop over there and sign up for that. And you can also find details about my Lovingly Fierce online codependent recovery course, which you are welcome to check out and sign up for if that appeals to you. And also come and hang out with me on Instagram. I'm on here way too much. I might be codependent with Instagram, George. Maybe we need to talk about that.
Definitely, me too.
You can check me out at Joe Westwood. Yeah, come and say hi, drop me a little comment, or or a DM. I'd love to chat with you.
Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to do a codependency episode for so long, and I'm so excited to have had that with you. You've given us such great, clear definition of codependency, of the difference between codependency and love, and a pathway that people can take to free themselves from codependent relationships and manifest a truly loving relationship. Thank you so much for sharing this space with you, and I wish you all watching us live as well a wonderful rest of your day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you so much, George. It's been a joy. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.